Yeah, I remember years ago when I moved to Lewisham and I had no money. I just come out of prison. I was a young YP. I'd been made up. My girlfriend's had a baby. She moved to Lewisham. I moved to Lewisham. And I needed money. The money I had wasn't a lot, but I could buy bits and pieces. So I needed money. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to work. I'm in a place area that I don't know nothing about. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to run around for a job. So the only thing that I knew that I was good at was fighting. And so, I started getting up at threes and fours in the morning and running. So I'd run around the hilly fields, all around Blackheath and all places like that. I was getting really, really fit. And I used to run around with a pack. I was a big guy, yeah. So I had to lose weight. I had to get really fit. And at the bottom of the road was a pub, and it was owned by these two guys called Two Rays, yeah. I didn't know that at the time. So one day I walked down the pub. I've been for a run. I've had a shower. It's in the afternoon. I walked in there, and just wanted an orange juice. Went up to the bar, got an orange, and just standing around. And as kids, yeah, as a young man in prison, when you see someone, someone who's a proper gangster, a proper dangerous man, you don't forget it because it's in your mind, isn't it? It's like one of them things, isn't it? And that's what you want to be, believe it or not. That's what I want to be, And, all the bits and pieces I've been doing, I thought, yeah, I've got to go forward now. And there is in front of me is a guy called Eddie Richardson. I got him straight away. My adrenaline in my body was going mad, because I was a young kid, the fear, that adrenaline fear was in me. I didn't know what to do. There was lots of guys in there. I was there by myself. I was staring at Eddie Richardson, and I was staring and looking down, then you're staring again, and you don't know what's going to go on, do you? You're new to the area. And all of a sudden, he went, all right, son, like that, just like that, and I started talking, and I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, you're Eddie Richardson, aren't you? He went, I am, yeah. I said, look, I just come out of prison myself, yeah. And I'm not a good reader, but I've looked at your books, and, it took me maybe on my birth just to read a book about you, and I'm quite excited, it's nice to meet you. And I started talking, and he was talking about what you're doing now. I said, look, I'm not doing nothing. I'm looking for work. I didn't like. I was just looking for work. I didn't know what he was going to say to me. Yeah. So because I was talking about fighting, he was quite interested in the fighting game, which he always has been. Yeah. So he said, "What are you interested in fights?" I said, "Yeah, I'm, very, very interested. I'll keep myself fit." He said, "Yeah." He said, "You'll be it." And I said, "Yeah, I'm about what now? 18 and a half stone, 19, 18 and a half, between 18 and a half, 19 stone." I said, "But I was a lot bigger than that when I came out of prison." So he couldn't believe the age of me and how big I was, how well I looked. And I said, "Look, I've been started running over here, hilly fields, and over Blackheath and bits and pieces like that, yeah." He said, "Look, why don't you go down to Beckett?" I said, "But how far is the Beckett from here?" I've heard of the Beckett. I said, "How far is the Beckett from here?" He said, "You can get a bus to the Beckett, take you, half an hour, 20 minutes, go there, and I'll be in touch with someone and to let them know you're going to come, yeah." So I think lovely, I was going back to my house all excited. He was there with a lot of people, and I was so excited to see him and talk to him. My adrenaline was going mad. It was, to meet someone like that, and you just come out of prison and you go to this road, Brookbank Road, and you go down the road pub there. You don't expect to meet someone like Eddie Richardson in the pub. Anyway, so I went down to Beckett, and I walked straight in there, started training. And I noticed a guy in the corner. Didn't have no tracksuit on. He was just had there was shirt, pair of trousers, shoes, and he was training kids. Kids, because I'm a kid myself. I'm only 20 odd years of age. I'm young, but I'm game. And he looked over, he came over to me, he said, you know, what happened to you? I told him, I said, look, I've just come out of prison, and, you know, and I had to say something, you know what I mean? So I said, look, I was down a pub where I live, Brookpaint Road. He said, yeah, I know Lewisham very well. I said, you know, I met a guy called Eddie Richardson. He said, oh, really? So, but Eddie had already told him that I was, when he got my name, he said, look, Eddie's told me about you. So look, if you're interested, I'll train you, you know what I mean? I was very interested, yeah. So he started to train me. He learnt me a lot, Jimmy Tibbet. He learnt me how to punch. I was a good banger, but how to combination punches and put them together, you know what I mean? And he said to me that, yeah, you're a good banger. When he got me on the pads, he was quite surprised. And, you know, but he was like mucking about, and he just like give me a little jab around the side, come over the top, you know, and he was very, very fast. Very, very fast, you know, and I put me, you know, bobbing and weaving it and all that, you know, but he could have hit me on the chin at any time, but he didn't, you know. I got respect for him, and I suppose a little bit of respect for me, because I was a young man just come out of prison when I get into unlicensed fighting. So I've been down there quite a few times, yeah. I went down there one day, and I bumped into a guy called Steve Richards, Colombo, yeah. I only knew him as Steve Richardson. I didn't know him as Colombo. I didn't know anything about the unlicensed fighting or fighting at that time, yeah. So when I looked over, and this geezer's like a lunatic, mate. He was like mad. He was like doing exercises like I've never seen before, yeah. You know, and so fit, so strong. And you know, and I was looking up. I looked up to this guy, Colombo, yeah. And I was training. All I kept doing was training. I only got a little ring at the back. I go in there, do a bit of shadow boxing, you know. And one day I went up there, and this guy walked in, and I couldn't believe it. This guy walked in. He was like 5'8", 9", I suppose, maybe. And he looked like a bull. You know, it was like a bull. Yeah. And I looked at him. And do you know what because, you know, like when you're in prison and, you know, you books and all that, you see people in there and all that, you know. And I knew who it was. I say I knew it was by looking at his picture, but I didn't know the name. But I knew knew who he was because I see him in magazines, in books, yeah. And I looked at him and I thought, I mean, I don't think I'm about 18.5 stone myself, 19 stone. I'm really big. I'm powerful, big arms, shoulders. He's like, you could see, I like to see people like that. I would like to see people the same as, yeah. And he got in the dressing room, and I was mucking about by the mirror. The mirror's right by the dressing room in the bucket. I was up on the mirror, boom, thing. And he come out, he got in the ring, and he started, you know, shadow boxing. Short, stubby legs, strong shoulders. And then I see Colombo, Steve Richards, get some gloves on, and also Roy Shaw, and they started bashing each other about like proper fighters, you know what I mean? I thought, oh yeah, you know what I mean? And I was looking at it, and I said, this Roy Shaw's a bit near the mark, you know. Of course, I found out later that it was an ex-pro middleweight, yeah, but he was a good fighter, mate, strong. And Colombo jumped out, and another guy got in with him called Lloyd Wolfram. Lloyd Wolfram was a big story, you know, in my book. Yeah, I think he is in my book, you know, about him, what he's done to me, Lloyd. And Lloyd Wolfram, black guy, can bang, you know. And he got him with Shorey, and Shorey was bobbing and weaving, crash. You know, Roy Shaw overpowered him, believe it or not. Even this big guy could really bang Lloyd Wolfram. Roy overpowered him. So then Jimmy Tibbet came up to me and said, "Want a few rounds?" But I was with my brother Bobby, my young brother Bobby, and I brought him down there. And yeah, you know, I said, "Yeah, of course." I got in the ring with Shorty, and well, you know, when I was a young kid, I used to go down to Haverstock Hill, Noble Art, and the Wellington Highgate, and all that. You know, with Mickey Francis, and you know, and all important sort of people. You know, and then when I was down when I was down the other one, Border Control Gym, with the Highgate, Haverstock Hill, Noble Art. You know, I was just sparring with good people. You know, and but it don't go out of you. You still got it there, but it takes a bit of time to come back out. So I got in with Roy, and Roy bashed me up. He bashed me up, boy. My brother started crying. My brother started crying, my Bobby, because he thought it was like really hurting me, because he was hitting me with some punches, Roy. And you know, he hurt me. He bashed me up. So Jimmy Tibbet took me out of there. Roy Shaw looked to me as if, you know, but when I got in the dressing room with Roy, and Roy was sitting down, and he's such a nice guy, man. You know, such a nice guy. You know, he's not loud. You know, and I was talking to him, and I said, look, you know, well, you know, you're hard and all this, that, and the other. And I was talking to him about, I've just come out of prison, YP, and then he started. He was right into me, you know what I mean, right involved with me. You know, saying, you know, I said, look, I want to get into this unlicensed game. He said, you should do, besides you. He said, you're a good banger. He said, but, you know, you've got to keep coming down, getting in the ring sparring to get better. And I was big, I was clumsy, you know, and I used to spar with good people. Georgie Francis loved me, George Francis, when I was down the Wellington Highgate. As I said, he wanted me to turn pro, Becky Duff and all that lot. But anyway, but after about a month of going down there sparring with Steve Richards, Colombo, and the time I sparred with Lloyd Waltham, that was the craziest. I mean, Lloyd, because the bracket is so small, you can't get away, and there's nothing you can do. You've got to fight. So Lloyd Waltham, I'm fighting, and I had to learn, because when I mean, you know, even as a young kid, I used to make that mistake that when I punched, I used to lift my chin up, and Lloyd Waltham, bang, he come over with a punch, mate, right hand, put me on my arse. But sometimes when you're hurt, you get up quick, you know, and I got up quick, but I got up so quick that I didn't know how long I'd been in the ring for. And then I got out of the ring, and then I thought, what's happening, mate? I was there, world was made, was ringing, and I got a shower and got ready and went. But instead of me going a shower, ready and going, I went the wrong way. Jimmy Tibbet was in the gym. I left gym. I think, I'm not quite sure if I was with my brother then. I don't think I was. Well, I walked down to Elephant Castle Station, and I live in Lewisham, and my car's outside. I bought a car. My car's outside the Beckett. So, you know, when I got to Elephant Castle Station, it kicked into me. What am I doing here? So I had to walk back and get the car and drive. And then I had a concussion. I had it really bad. Lloyd Waltham gave me a bad concussion. And, you know, when I went home, I didn't know where I was. I was in, you know, but I said to the girl I was with at the time, I said, look, you know, I've been hurt, you know, I'm a bit dizzy. So I went and laid down, and they say it can really damage you, a bit more like it did, you know what I mean? And then Jimmy Tibbet phoned me up, and he said, look, we've got a fight, if you want it. I went, yeah. So I'd already had 2 fights down at Harvey Social Club Village. Not real good fights, but fights that I won easy. They, you know, and I went to the Rainbow, and I fought Brian Hall. Brian Hall was a well-known heavyweight. He was an old campaigner. He'd fight 24 hours a day if he could, you know. Him, Colombo, you know, they'd fight 24 hours if they could, you know. So I boxed, well, you know, had a fight with Brian Hall, I thought I'd won the fight, but it was a draw. And from that time, when Lenny had words and this, that, and the other, from that time, my life changed. It changed. I was getting more fights. I was with Jimmy Tibbet, and then I started doing enforcer work with Jimmy Tibbet. But I'll do that later, a bit more, yeah? But bang, bang, oh, good morning.